Hey, welcome to the conversation that's as diverse as the dogs that we adore. This is Gundogs and Guard Dogs, ultimate podcast dedicated to talking sense about dogs with Les Graham and Ross McCarthy. They work with all breeds of dog, but one specialises in Gundogs and the other prefers Guard Dogs. No flashy trends or social media hype here, just tried and true knowledge that stands the test of time. They bring you valuable insights and honest conversations about the social predator you share your home with. So here we go. About 45 minutes of gun dogs, guard dogs, good dogs, some maybe not so good dogs, and a dash of gossip.
So here we are, what should be gun dogs and guard dogs. Turns out it's gun dogs and more gun dogs this week.
How this week?
What?
How this week? Just because of who we're talking to.
It's all about gun dogs, isn't it?
It is. It is, and hopefully we'll have one that's all about guard dogs soon as well.
Yeah, maybe that'd be nice, wouldn't
it? Well, it might be.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, so today we're talking to Di Stevens.
Yes. Keep going.
Which is fascinating.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, good. No, fascinating. So, you know Di much better than I do, but fascinating insight really into like the breeding of Labradors, how she started, the show lines mixed with the working line dogs, getting the right dog for the right job, and delving into field trials and the show world as well. So yeah, fascinating little chat.
It wasn't the difference between the handling here and in Europe, because Di does a lot of judging overseas as well, doesn't she? So just learning how things have changed from a handling perspective and a training perspective in Europe as well as in the UK was interesting, really interesting.
Really positive, isn't it? Positive changes.
Really positive, and it was so good to hear that more and more pets are taking part in trials. It's not all about big kennels and big dogs living out in kennels all the time. People with pets, which is like a real passion of mine. Having pet gun dogs and I funny that, isn't it? Having pet gun dogs and doing things with them and winning, which is just awesome.
I don't know why it took people so long to realise you don't have to have a dog in the kennel for 23 hours a day and bring it out for an hour to get any kind of decent training out of it. The dog can live in your house and you can still achieve amazing results, can't you?
Yeah, definitely.
People, I don't know why they didn't know that for so long, but they didn't. Or a lot of people didn't.
A lot of people didn't. And they still push back.
Yeah.
But no, definitely. It was good. Really good.
Good. Right. Well, shall we shut up and let people listen to all of that fascinating stuff from Di Stevens?
I think we should. We are here with the gorgeous Di Stevens from Willen, I know he said Dylan, Willen Briar Labradors, not Wylan. Willen as in Dylan.
As in Dylan.
As in Dylan, which I've just been told. So Di, welcome. Thank you for coming and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
So Craigie, where to start? You are so well known in the Gundog world. And you kind of do everything: trialing, judging, breeding, showing, commentating at the CLA.
Yeah, I nearly forgot that one. You're right.
Yeah, I got that one.
Teaching.
How did you get into Gundogs? And I've got to ask, why Labradors?
Good question. So I got into. I always wanted a dog at home, and we weren't. I started out, I was born on the council estate and then gradually, slowly upgraded. My dad was a grafter and took us out of that and put us in a nice-ish part of Brighton. And we were in the middle of a town and I was always very horsey. And I used to sort of bob a job, get riding lessons. And I used to love the Labradors up the yard, and they always seemed to be the fun ones. And that's come back to haunt me now. So that's how originally I decided that I liked Labradors from seeing them around, the horsey set kind of thing. And I set up a little business making and breaking young horses that had been ruined by their rich pony club owning Prince Philip Cup, Gymkhana
Darling.
Games ponies, darlings, exactly. And I took the fall on the chin and broke them again and didn't resell them back to them, but I'd be paid a fee anyway. So I started doing that as a business and ran into more and more dogs and stuff like that. And when I say as a business, I'm talking I was about 13, 14, 15. But I got quite a good reputation for pulling the very expensive ones that have been ruined back on side. And so that's kind of how I got into this world as such, from quite a towny background, really. And then I left home at 19, I got my own chocolate Labrador, and she was called Penny, but she was called Molly. I apologise. And then her daughter was Penny. I bred my first litter, and her daughter was Penny, and then Penny's son was Dylan, and Dylan Willen, and so Dylan Willen became Willen Briar because I lived in Briar Close at the time. And that's how basically the ball started rolling. I ended up with 3 Labradors, Molly, Penny, and Dylan, 3 generations, and in fairly quick succession, I must admit. And that was kind of how I started showing with Dylan, and going out with people that I'd met through horses to go out shooting and picking up, basically, not shooting myself. I've never raised a gun in my life. It's the one thing that I don't do. So that's kind of how I got into things.
Were they all chocolate Labradors?
No, so Granny and Mum were both black, and Granny was chocolate, Mum was black, and Dylan was chocolate. So I ended up with 2 chockies and a black. And they were all predominantly show lines. In fact, they were all show lines. And I showed them with some success, and took them out beating and picking up and whatever anybody wanted me to do, just to get out in the country for the day. And they were dreadfully behaved mostly, but I became a lot more ambitious in behaviour fronts with Dylan. So Dylan was born in 1995. I was born in 1974. So I was just sort of round about the 20 mark when I was on my second generation, and just sort of kicking off into my own little dog world.
Wow. And were you in Brighton, like in the centre of Brighton, or in the outskirts?
I was in
down
Hove,
there.
actually.
Oh,
Hove actually.
You're a
Hove
Hove actually
actually.
girl.
On the edge of Hove, actually, not in the posh part of Hove, actually. In the sort of by the Brighton Hove Albion Seagulls football stadium part of Hove, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, and so I then got married, just real potted bio. I then got married quite young. I was a real nightclubby girl, proper towny still in the night and
Pink
country in the
flamingo.
day, and married the DJ,
Oh God.
head of Rank Leisure DJ, and moved down to Portsmouth, of all places, down to Southsea. And we had a little house in Southsea, and we had at one point 8 Labradors in a very little terraced house in Southsea. And I was travelling all over the country, showing and doing the odd working event. And that was sort of between sort of 95 and kind of 98, 99. And yeah, and then unfortunately that went a bit tits up. So I moved back up here to home, so to speak, and got a little house in Lancing, or something, just near Lancing, which is
Really?
yeah, and carried on with the old Willen Briar Labradors from that house for 20 something years. Had 2 husbands in the meantime, both that lived in that house and then didn't live in that house. But Diam, the Willen Briar Labradors, stayed in something until about 8 years ago. So, and then we moved to the country, the proper country.
Whereabouts are you now? Who's who?
So I spent 7 of those 8 years in Balcombe, which is by Haywards Heath in West Sussex, on a shooting estate, with a state cottage and all sorts of things, and teaching there and doing all sorts of dog things. And then in the last year, I moved from Balcombe, just about 10 miles down the road, to Hand Cross, and that's where I live now, in a nice little house in Hang Cross with the Willenborough Labradors.
And have you rehomed all those husbands now?
Yeah, they're all rehomed. Yeah, a husband's is the dog is for life. A husband isn't.
It's quite easy, yes. Really, I mean, we do a lot talking about rescue, rehoming dogs, and it's a nightmare in it at the moment. But rehoming husbands, it's quite easy, isn't it? So,
really easy, because men only ever leave for another woman. They never ever leave to be on their own, whereas a woman leaves to be on her own sometimes. You see, so rehoming is no problem, because if they go, it's always for a nice, house that's going to feed them and give them, the drink they require, and so on.
I didn't know. God, we crossed paths so many times because, like, I worked in Brighton, and so the joke of Hove actually is,
I
people,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
people will go, "Are you from Brighton?" No, I'm from Hove actually, and so everyone calls it Hove actually. And then
They do,
yeah,
yeah.
I learned how to windsurf on the Little Hove Lagoon,
Oh my goodness.
and I used to work at Amex in Brighton.
Oh my God, yeah. So did my uncle, Christopher Isherwood.
Oh, okay,
But
150 Edward Street, and then we worked in like the wedding cake building as well. And
oh
then
yeah, I know, yeah.
I lived in Worthing for like 20 years.
Oh my God.
I
God, we
know.
really did
We've
practically trip over each other.
yeah. And
That's
then I
absolutely
started
crazy.
Gundog training with a guy called Anthony, can't remember his surname, in West something or other. I can't remember. West something in
Not
Sussex.
Anthony Williams.
Uh,
No.
I can't remember. I know he used e-collars. That's all I can remember. And he offered to buy Bart off me when I moved to New Zealand. He
Oh my
wanted
God.
to buy
You
Bart.
really shipped around me. I've gone, Moulsecoomb, Brighton, Hove, Southsea. You've gone
Yeah, and then
New
I picked up in the
Zealand.
New Forest. I did all my picking
Oh,
up was down at Bewley on
oh
the Bewley
wow.
Manor Estate. Yeah, I used to pick up for Lord Montague.
Oh wow. Oh, amazing.
I know.
Proper shoots, you see, proper classy shoots with people that knew how to treat a bird and conduct themselves. I always felt a fish out of
Absolutely.
water. I was always the builder's tea girl, when they were all drinking Darjeeling.
I used to get called the Townie. I used to get
Yeah,
called the blonde Townie.
the
And
blood.
that was it, and the first time I am going to get back to asking you some stuff, but the first time when I took Bart, the first time he picked up a runner, I he brought it over and I took it, and at the time I was still a kinesiologist, so I picked this thing up and I thought it was dead and it flapped its wings and I was like, oh my God. So I kind of held it
Scream.
like a
Did you
baby.
actually girly scream?
Almost. I was cuddling it, and in my head I was going, heal or die, heal or die, heal or die.
Someone call a vet.
It was. And one of the guys came over and he says, do you want me to take that for you? And I was, oh God, yes, please. Yeah, take it, do something with it.
It's a
I
funny
couldn't
world.
cope. It was so funny. Whereas now, like, the only thing I won't dispatch is a duck. I don't like working with ducks.
Dispatching duck is awful. That's one of the things when I'm judging. It's one of the things that I tell my trainees, that within the Gundog world, in fact within the country sports / field sports world, you can have your own thoughts, and you can have your own boundaries, and you can have your own ethics, and you do not have to go, I love one country sport, so I love all of them, or I love one type of shooting, so I love all of it. I'm not worldly keen on stalking. I really think deer are beautiful, and I like eating them, so it's very bad of me. But I'd prefer not to go out stalking. And my other half used to stalk a lot, and he was very successful. And there we go. That's probably why I left him. No, I'm just kidding. But no, he yeah. So different. Yeah, dispatching ducks is
Awful.
yeah. It is. It
Can't
is
do it.
always. Dear old pheasants, they're so straightforward. Even partridge refuse to die, don't they? But
Yeah, poor Ross. Ross's face is like, oh my God, I feed my dogs raw
Not
meat.
my bag at all. Not my
no,
bag.
I know, and
We'll get
that's
off
why
it.
I say that I've never actually shot it. I mean, I know you're kind of like what's the word, linked by association, but I've well, so it's actually, it all links in. I might have been an actual gun, might have actually shot, had I not fallen off 60,000 ponies. and got kicked in the face and the neck and the shoulder and the collarbone and broken this and broken that. And basically my collarbones are dust. So I can't possibly put a gun to them and shoot it. So it's all linked in because of the first kind of, in inverted commas, job I had. Yeah. But no, I mean, want to kill.
Have you ever shot, Ross?
No,
not birds or anything. Have you picked up? Have you ever done like
clay pigeons
pigeon shooting or anything?
Yeah, clay pigeons. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I'd rather sit home and have a glass of wine, I think. I mean, it's all right. I mean, it's better than shooting a bird for sure.
I don't think I could shoot. I don't think I could shoot a bird. I can shoot clays, but I don't think I'd be able to shoot a bird.
No, it's not. Mind you, a lot of people that go into gun dogs don't, do they? You know what I mean?
No,
like you said,
no, they don't. They don't. And there's a lot of pressure when you're judging to also be a gun, because they believe that you can't understand various things that happen during a trial that require that are to do with shot size and the type of gun being used and that kind of thing. I mean, damage to a bird, for example, being shot, is it the shot that's done it, or is it the dog that's done it, and things like that, and without shooting. But most A panel judges do shoot, male and female, and sort of but I'm quite stubbornly, and my ex other half, Monty, took a lot of time to talk me through different shot size and how shot patterns hit certain things, and and what sort of damage is likely and unlikely and things. He was very, very good.
I don't think you have to do things to understand, do you? Do you know?
No,
what I mean?
no, not completely. No, definitely. I understand. I have never swum the channel, but I also know that I would never want to.
Yeah,
it's that kind of thing, isn't it? So, Di, how did you go from having your handful of labs in Lansing and something to starting like Gundog training and then moving into the profession? What were you doing at the time when you first started?
Okay, so I was a marketing manager for a Malaysian timber company, and I'd worked that virtually since sort of school, let's say. So from about 17, 18, I'd worked there and worked my way up a little bit. It's only a smallish company, but I used to do a lot of travel out to Indonesia and over to Canada and all that kind of thing, and lots of marketing stuff. And it started to overlap. So I had litters. I used to have one, maybe 2 litters a year, and I worked full time, but I always had another half at the time, and they might have been slightly different other halves, but they were I always had a partner, so I had a bit of help. And the whole litters thing, you'd have the buyers say, oh, I can't get him to do this, I can't get him to do that. So I started off doing classes for when I'd sold a litter. I'd then ask them to come back 4 or 5 times for a puppy class. And it kind of went from there. Then somebody said, and all right the way through, my stud dogs have been used. I've always had the team of stud dogs. And so there's always been stud puppies as well. So then I opened up the Will and Briar litter class to the stud puppies that were at roughly the same age. And then they wanted to carry it on after the 5 weeks, and then blah, 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 blah. And then somebody else said, my neighbour's got a golden retriever. She could really benefit from this. Can she come? And so that started to take off round about the time that we really frequently had mobile phones. So what would happen, I'd be at my proper job and it would start to overlap. And my phone would be ringing and I'd be texting, and the internet was starting, and suddenly I'd have my screen the other way and I'd be on Labrador forums promoting my little class on the Sunday, and the boss would go, what are you on? And they're like, oh shit. So I had a very nice boss, as I say. We were together a long time, and he turned around and said to me about 12 years ago, listen, Di, it's starting to overlap, mate. You got to make a decision. Either you work this job or you are a dog woman. And, it's hard enough when you've got a litter. If they're ill, you take a day off at late notice and things. This is starting to get silly. So I sat down one night and took a deep breath and said, you're right, I'm going to leave and I'm going to start a dog company. And that's when Willenbriar Labradors had obviously always been going because I'd been breeding. But then that overnight, I started a proper company, got a website made, started Facebook pages and blah, 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 and built Willenbriar Gundog training. And it took off and got bigger and bigger and bigger. So there we go.
Because you're really well known for like breeding Labradors and breeding really quality Labradors. You're always putting stuff out in relation to good breeding standards, and you've got your breeding group as well.
Yeah.
Was that really a passion before you started doing the Gundog training? When did you start competing?
Oh, now, okay. So I, with my show dogs, quite a few generations of show dogs. I went out shooting with them, and then I wanted to get them a bit better. So I started to have some lessons, and I went to classes, usually club training classes. So down our way, Kent, Surrey and Sussex and Uggs and URC and things. Ran into Joy Venturi Rose and Chris Rose, and started having private lessons with them and going to their private classes. And they very much had show dogs that they worked. And I progressed into, my brain's gone blank, sorry. So I progressed into deciding that I was doing quite well with these showbred dogs, but the ceiling was hard to be up the top end. So I did trial some of my chocolates. I got a COM with one of them, but I mostly didn't get there. Something with slow return, or it wouldn't jump a big fence, or wouldn't face cover is another thing that the show dogs tend to be not quite so good at.
Really? They're not
just
like
not as
those
brave.
scrambles, let me put my face in them.
Exactly, and because they're bred to kind of look pretty and not bite the postman, they're not really there to churn a gut instinct to go at 400 miles an hour out and back, particularly back, because with a showbred dog it can have loads and loads of desire to get out and get it, and then usually on the way back it's gone, lovely, I've done the job, la 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 la, and and its passion isn't quite the same to roar back so it can, with some of the working bred dogs, to get back out again for another one. And that was kind of some of the difference. So we got quite well known for working these showbred dogs. And as I say, I trialled them. I won open test awards. I won 2 or 3 novice tests. I won an intermediate test with the showbred dogs and passed Gundog working certificate in its very, very early days and things. And then I started having lessons with a lady called Gilly Nichols, and she was over in East Sussex, and she turned around to me one day. I'd really had a massive fight with one of the dogs to try and get it over this fence, and we finally did it, and then you back off and you send it again, and it goes, no, I can't do it again, and you're like, oh, come on. And I'd really struggled. And at the end of the class, I was sort of walking back to the cars all sort of gloomy. And she said to me, Diana, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you trying? What are you trying to achieve here? If you want to go into working, get yourself a tool. You don't go in a Grand Prix with a Fiat Panda. She said, so, get yourself a tool for the job. And so I house sat for her about 6 weeks later for a couple of weeks when they went up to Scotland, and looked after her kennels and all their million dogs. And she had a litter at the time, and I whelped the litter, and we had all sorts of disasters. The water didn't work, the mum ran away and didn't know me from Adam and wasn't the world's best mother, and blah, blah, blah. When she got back, she gave me a puppy. And so it was a trial bred puppy, and that was my dog called Bondi. Bedgebrook, never say never to Willenbriar. Never say never, you see. And I won novice trials, and I've won, got places in the area finals and things with him, and never really looked back. But for the stud team, because we are commercial, so we have to cover the market of what people want. I've always had showbred dogs and half and halfies in the kennel, deliberately as well, to cover the spectrum, and also obviously to bring the chocolate gene in. Mostly, even if it looks like a working chocolate, if you actually stick its pedigree on the table, it isn't really. It's not the way that a black or yellow trial-bred dog is. So you need those chocolate genes in, and I want to go to Crufts and win. So consequently, in the working classes, so I've always got to have a few handsome boys. And so this is when you go back to the start and sort of say, oh, everybody knows you. It is because I'm bloody annoying. I'm in everything. It's like I'm on committees. I'm field trial secretary. I've been a working test secretary. I've been a show secretary. I've been a general secretary. In lots of different clubs and done the judging right up through. I've judged shows. I've judged at Crufts. I've judged. So I sort of cross the spectrum. I breed show. I breed working. I breed a mix of the two. I've got a Gundog training company. I've won trials and run at the championship. So there isn't an awful lot of the breed, that I haven't got a finger in the pie of. So it's hard not to know me, really. And I think, I try and stay out of trouble. I try to do the right things. I'm not a controversial person particularly. And so consequently, I it's much easier to stay liked, I've always found, than to throw yourself into big campaigns. But yeah. So that's kind of me and everything.
Easier said than done in the dog world, isn't it? Staying liked.
It is. Social media doesn't make life any easier.
No.
It has some massive advantages and it has some disadvantages. And untruths can spread very easily, and you can get very jealousy. Now, when one thing I will say on the working side, when you're only in the working side, you you can't understand how insecure and jealous and bitter the show side can be, because when you go to a show, you're only having your dog judged on its looks and its conformation. It is a show judge's opinion only. And although they got to write a little critique on number 1 and 2, they haven't got to justify why 3 to 27 are walking out the door. In working, we at least, although people can rage about, that was an unfair decision, that was too hasty, blah, 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 blah. Generally speaking, it's like show jumping. You have a fence down, you add a fence down. Okay, it might not be in the cups properly. It might be a windy day, whatever. But you cannot deny the performance was lower than the person that won. Yeah. And that is why, there's hiccups on the working side. But if you've been in the show side, you understand just how unhiccupy the working side is. And you just don't get worked up about, I've run in loads, dozens, I can't, must be a word between dozens and hundreds, is somewhere between there, of field trials. And I could tell you probably one day where I genuinely felt that I was wronged and my dog was wronged. And one day, whereas some people come back and they seem to feel like it every other trial. And it's kennel blindness. It's madness, It's a real shame. So yes, it is hard to stay liked. If you're successful, it's very easy to be liked when nobody feels threatened by you.
I think it's easy. I think you just made a really good point actually, because in the workings, I do or have done kennel club working trials, where everybody really is very supportive. It's a lovely group of people that want you to do well because you just want to qualify your dog. You don't be nice to come first or get a place, wouldn't it? But as long as we qualify the dog, that's cool. Whereas in the show ring, a lot of it I see is kind of if your face fits, we're not looking at the dog aesthetically, like you just said. We're looking at who's on the other end of the lead. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of
I do. And this is one of the only places where there is definitely an element of that. I'm not going to deny it. And basically what that is weak character. So it's judging, being intimidated by the people that are standing in the ring. So it's actually, rather than blatant unfairness because you're going around someone's for dinner tonight, it's weakness that you can't look a friend in the face and kick them out the ring and not pull them in for the awards. It's weakness as opposed to nastiness, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Yes, okay. Doing favours, one one person's meant to give someone one thing and gives another. But honestly, truly, because I've judged so much, when you stand in the middle of the ring, doesn't, and I've spoken to Best in Show at Crufts judges on this, and we've sat and had a beer, and it doesn't really cross your mind. You look round the ring and you just literally, you're staring at the dogs. I'm not saying you don't look up the lead, but you are staring at the dogs. And also there are people that are really blind. They go under these judges time and time again. With showing, if you look at what a judge is breeding and bringing out in the ring, if your dogs do not look like that, why are you bothering to go under them? Because clearly in showing, that is the type this judge likes, or they wouldn't be living with it day in, day out. So people that have got something completely different in type to that, that have been kicked out last year and kicked out 3 years ago, why are they cheating you by kicking you out the fourth time? I think they're actually being fair. There's an awful lot of moaning about judging, but I don't actually think there's as much corruption as people think in either side, either side.
No, I had two questions for you. I've forgotten one, but I'll think of that in a minute. First, one was just, could you give us like a real quick overview of what field trials are? Like what,
Yeah.
just a kind of potted.
Yeah, it's to test the best shooting companion dog in under as close to a live shooting situation as possible. That is never going to be exactly how things play out, because they are a competition. They're a knockout competition. So with a field trial, you start with a field of, say, 14 dogs, and gradually they will be sent on retrieves and various, graded according to how good the retrieve was, and gradually dogs will fall by the wayside until you get left with, you don't always get left with a winner if everybody's a bit rubbish that day. There's no winner, so they can withhold first, but generally speaking, you end up with first, second, third, or whatever. And the judges are looking for style in what the dog's doing, obedience, and also the hard part, adding into that, you want to see the dog being a problem solver. You want to see the dog being able to get on with finding game rather than just being put on X marks the spot by the handler. So you want the dog to have show off its natural instincts a little bit whilst trying to pull it in as well and say, whoa, Neddy, that doesn't mean gallop everywhere. It means go where I tell you and have a look around where I put you, So that's that. Field trials are always in the shooting season. So basically between the glorious 12th in August on grouse all the way through to the end of the pheasant season on the 1st of February. So that's the only time trials are run. And then working tests take over, which are sort of mock-ups roughly of field trials, very roughly, but only on dummies. So some people who don't particularly want to go to game just spend all this summer running in working tests on dummies and not progressing on to doing field trials in the winter. And that's absolutely fine. That's 100% fine. Some people like myself very, very rarely go in a working test because we're just training for, and of course you can't train on game outside the season unless it's cold game that was from the season before. So that's what they are. And what you're looking to do is try and make your dog very, very hard to, but into a field trial champion.
Nice little red bits in your pedigree.
Exactly that. So you can put red bits in your pedigree. Exactly. So that's what they're all about. And I read a book, funny enough, this book here. Of course you won't see. Sorry.
That's okay.
Field Trials and Judging, which was written in 1922. Just going back to what you were saying about judging and all that and face fitting. So I read that on holiday recently, and it was written in 1922. And in the year 2000, Susan Scales, who's a very knowledgeable lady, no longer with us, but she would intersperse. So it was reprinted with her interspersements about how things have changed through the years from how it's described, all the field trials and judging that was being written about in 22. And it's incredible how little it has changed. Incredible how little it's changed. It's incredible how the same things are moaned about in 2025 as were moaned about in 1922. You know, oh, that bird was unpickable. Oh, that water was flowing too fast. Whatever. That judge wasn't really watching me. He was lighting the flag, you know. And it quite incredible, really. But my point being that the last page of it had a statement that's been very hard. So field trials are sometimes described as circus tricks. And what's asked in them isn't, like a shooting man would say, isn't like a shooting day. When he finishes shooting, he just takes his lead off and says, get on, lets us go gallop around and find things and hopefully bring them back. And what the book said is, anyone who describes, this is in 1922, anyone who describes field trials as circus tricks don't understand the fact that the Grand National was set out to find the best hunting horse. And it is no longer but it's completely different to a day's hunting. And that's exactly the same as field trials. Field trials are there to find the best guns dog. And you know, because field trials do get a bit of grief about, you know, the precision and handlers finding game for their dogs rather than the dogs finding it and all this kind of stuff. And some of it's to some level justified. But if you're out shooting and you're picking up and you're sat up on a bank and you're watching the gun shooting and you see something come down injured, which is what we're there for. We're not there for the dead birds. We're there to gather the injured birds as fast as possible. And you don't have a dog that you can stop, and you don't have a dog that you can push further back, and you don't have a dog that you can ask to ignore that dead bird to go after the live bird. All the things that the average shooting man hasn't got and mocks in trialers, it gets a round of applause from the guns when you actually can leave that big pile of dead birds over there, send the dog in another direction completely, stop it, handle it, jump it over a fence, get it into the wood, tell it to get on with it, and back it comes over the fence with it, you know. And it isn't circus tricks. It is the most desirable way that you could have a gun dog, but it gets underrated by the shooting guys quite often.
I guess it's all factions, isn't it? In any kind of, you know, discipline, sport,
whatever. Yeah, because they can't do it, they mock it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I haven't trialed in the UK. I trialed in New Zealand, but they didn't do trialing that. Yeah, I qualified my dog for the New Zealand Championships.
Wow.
Art, my first one. Yeah. I haven't been on a trial in the UK at all. I've done working tests, but that's it. I was going to be thinking of trialing Emrys until he went lame. But how do you find transitioning from trialist to judge? And something I did want to ask you actually, Di, was you've judged a lot overseas. So have you seen a difference in like the European breeding of Labradors compared to the British breeding of Labradors, and also like the mouth quality? Because I know like a lot of the European HPRs, not so much now, but they used to be quite hard mouth compared with like the British Gundogs. You know, they would always have a bit of a bite on them. And how do you find the training styles? It's just, you know, trying to compare, because we had somebody on from, was it Seattle where Di was from?
Yeah, Seattle, yeah.
Seattle. And we're just talking about the difference between how people are in America with the dogs to how people are now over in the UK. And it'd be really interesting to see like how they're handling the retrievers and how the retrievers are different in Europe. Because people always want to compare what's going on in different places, don't they? So as a judge, what do you see different in the European trials to the UK trials?
Can I add on to the back of that as well to further complicate this question? What I was going to ask you is how you've seen training methods change over the last sort of 30 years or whatever in the Gundog community, because notoriously it was all very harsh, wasn't it? And I think there has been massive, you know, strides forward. So that was one element. And the other one was how training methods vary in overseas countries. So if you can tag that on the back of what Les just said and go with that.
Oh, how long we got?
Just a little question. Just a little question.
Okay, so most of the serious trialers, trainers, working testers, the people that make the international teams on all the European countries, truthfully, they mainly come over and train in the UK, or they come over for big periods of time and train in the UK, or they hire UK trainers, your top end folks, to go out there and train them for a period of time. So these days, if you asked me that 20 years ago or 15 years ago, maybe even, or possibly even 10 years ago, I would say to you that the standard was much lower in Europe, and wins were much easier got, shall we say. However, now, and since the FCI have wanted UK panel judges for all the important field trials, lots and lots over a period of time, lots and lots of trials had no result, no winner, no winner, no winner, and they basically pulled their socks up and came and trained over here, and have improved immeasurably. I mean, I judged a working test last year. I mean, I've judged trials this year, but particularly one stands in my head where I set an open test. I had to set a puppy test and then a novice test and an open test on the same piece of ground, which is fairly common out there, and then have the puppy and the novice in the morning and the open in the afternoon. And I set the open and I looked at it and I thought, bloody hell, that's a bit hard. I'm not sure about that. And I was even prepared at the point that if dog number one really couldn't get anywhere near it, I was going to scrap it then and downgrade it, start again. And you know what? They were brilliant. And I can honestly say, I think the standard of open tests over on the continent is possibly higher than here.
Wow.
Certainly down south anyway. And I hate to say that, but our bar down south is a little bit self-indulgent, is a little bit lower in many cases. And truthfully, like my dad won his trial up north, won his novice trial up north. And I can't resist putting that in because everybody who trials knows that is a harder fought win, to be fair. In the main, the standard is generally higher. Their training grounds are better. Anyway, that's up north, that's not abroad. So in terms of the dogs, one of the reasons possibly, and it might be a bit controversial, that originally the European dogs were pretty hard-mouthed would be twofold. One is they weren't training them properly, so they were putting too much pressure on them without actually any clear direction to the dog about why. And so the dogs were taking all sorts of stress and adrenaline behavior. And the mouth, one of the first things to go, chewing on the way back and all that kind of stuff. And so that might be one reason. But as the training got better, I've not put a dog out for hard mouth abroad in the last 10 years. So, and to be fair, I've probably only put a very small amount out here because it's a massive thing to turn around to someone and say, because it really does, if that word gets round, it really does bugger their stud career if they're a male, because people believe it's genetic. And so I think over there, their training methods, they're very dedicated. I mean, by God, they're dedicated. I see the same people when I judge. So I fly out, 1 hour to Belgium, and I see the same people as when I fly 3.5 hours down to the bottom of Italy. I see the same people at those working tests. I see them in Hungary. I see the same people in Hungary. I see them in France. I see them in Germany. You see them in Spain, and they travel and travel and travel and travel, and quite often. So working tests there are always Saturday, Sunday. They just travel completely through the night and run in the working test.
Wow.
It without a second's sleep, and the dedication. So when you're that dedicated and you're driving that many miles, you've got to also be thinking how you can't go there and just constantly come last. That's just ridiculous amounts of money and time. So I think that's another reason. It's it's smartened up. I mean, I used to judge trials when I was first judging trials, where as a runoff, they'd literally throw a bird over a hedge from a cage, and someone would shoot it, and the dog would run out and pick it. And you know, coming from English shooting, you'd sort of look at your co-judges while they were kind of nodding and, oh yes, okay, that's fine. And I'd be like, that's not fine. What part of fine is that? You know, and things have changed. There's that you wouldn't get any of that now. So it yeah, I think in general training methods, people are better thinkers. Another thing over there, you get very, very few big kennels. Most people rock up to a working test or a field trial. There's very few trucks. Whereas now you rock up at a field trial in England, or maybe even a working test, and 50% at least of what's in the car park is trucks and Nevadas and Hiluxes and Rangers and trucks, you know.
Really?
It's not out there, not at all, not even 5%. It's normal cars, and the dog is possibly on the back seat in a harness, and it's come out at an open trial. They are genuinely their pet dogs. A lot of these
Nice.
people live right in the middle of a town, even the top people, even in apartments and flats and things, and they've got maybe 2 dogs. So my point being, they're not going to sell that on because they've broken it. They need to make it stay and work for them and compete and do the sport they want to do. So they're not going to beat it up and ruin their relationship so it's in the corner of their kitchen, scared of them, because so sometimes that can, you know, it can really work. And I mean, it still works in England. There's a lot less big kennels out there. A lot of the open working test people, it's their pet dog that tomorrow it's going down the beach with the grandkids, you know. But probably even more so in quite often, you know, the winning dog, you'll at some big trial, or let's say big working test, so it's in the summer, there's usually an ice cream van at working tests abroad, and you know, the winning dog is pictured on the front cover with an ice cream up his nose, you know, like as his praise. And that doesn't happen in England.
No. It's interesting what you said though, because I can remember when I had Angus, the amount of Gundog, my golden retriever I brought, he was the show Goldie come back from New Zealand with me. And
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you can remember us, the amount of Gundog trainers that said to me, you need to rehome that dog because you'll never make it as a Gundog. And yet he was an awesome picking up dog. He was just a bit of a slow learner. And I think the big kennels, that happens a lot too, where people will see a dog, especially like a stud dog or something, or a bitch, and they see it work and it's really working nice, and they go, I want I want a puppy from that, only to find out that it was a pain in the neck and it's gone through 5 trainers before it got to the point it did. It's been moved on as being a difficult dog. I'm just thinking of my vet, that happened to her. She saw a dog, she was a vet on the trial, and said she wanted a dog from this bitch, not realizing that it was on the 3rd trainer because the first 2 people broke it.
Yeah.
You know, just and it's nice to hear that that isn't happening as much, and it's definitely not happening on the continent.
It's definitely not happening as much. Listen, anybody can nip into a back room and see things they don't want to see, but in the vast majority of what I'm experiencing, I would say, you know, it's
Training's improving.
Training's improving. The standard of training is improving, and I'm proud that generally that's probably because they have come over to the UK, you know, and they have asked UK trainers over there. And I think as well, if you go to somewhere where they aren't, and the other thing is, an awful lot of their training is on very, very public ground. So I've taken some training days on, say, golf courses where you've got all the golfers wandering around, you know, around the outside. There's no privacy about it. So you're not going to make a dog scream because everybody's going to come running from you know, every corner of the world. So, and you're not going to get asked back, and you're not going to, so they're nice to their dogs. So what I'm trying to say is even the harder UK trainers, when they go over there, they have to adjust their methods to accordingly. You know, they are not on private land. They cannot do whatever they want. And that has helped. I'm not saying as humans they shouldn't want to do that, but you know, if it,
Have
so I
the
think
methods changed in the UK as well, do you think? Do you think things
yeah,
are getting better?
I do, and everybody kind of says dogs have got softer. And I think there's a very logical reason for that. I think it's a very throwaway statement with an element. I'm very keen if I make a throwaway statement, I know how I can back it up. And that is because there aren't all these big kennels now. The people, a bit like the Italians, for example, we live with our dogs now. They tend to be in the house. They tend to be not out in kennels, or if they are, they still come to work with us or whatever. So they're not softer per se. It's just that we have to breed a dog that can be a pet dog as well as a working dog. And to do that, you can't really use two headbangers. You could maybe win the championship with two headbangers, but even then, a lot of adrenaline behaviours are going to come in, and most of them are going to be cast out for noise and all sorts of things. And that's why things have got better. Dogs have got softer. You don't have to be so hard on them. And I mean, who knows if they hadn't have been as hard back then, were those dogs softer? Did they zone them out and therefore seem hard? You know, it's a very, and people think more now. I think people think more. The standard is higher. So I think people have found that they've got to have a relationship with the dog as well as school it and train it. The dog has got to want to try for them to win. Try for itself as well, but it's got to want to try for the handler. And a dog that doesn't try or is purely self-employed doesn't have the relationship to go out and win these days. There will be something that's lacking in what happens, whether it's delivery or, you know, whatever, hunting, stop whistle. Usually that's where it usually goes. If you haven't got a relationship with a dog, it's hard to put it on the stop whistle because it doesn't care. So you know, there you go.
Brilliant. Thank you. That kind of took us around all the different houses, didn't it, Ross?
No, it's good. And now we've run out of time, and I wanted to talk to you about your chocolate Labradors, but I'll go on your website and read. I saw there was an article on there. I've not read it yet. But I'll go
Lots of assistance dogs as well. We've bred lots of assistance dogs. So out of those lines, but sadly the assistance companies don't tend to do their own breeding programs anymore. And they tend to only take donations. But a lot of our chocolates used to go as assistance dogs. So I wouldn't say that they were ever going to win University Challenge, but they were straightforward little people that you know that could help people.
Yeah.
And before we finish, can I just congratulate you on your win at Croft?
Yeah, wasn't that fun? Oh my God. Yeah, third time in 4 years with the same dog, and he's just a legend. I've won that class 4 or 5 times other than Morph, but yeah, very, very proud of him. He danced his way around, and he looked lovely.
That was the Basque ring, wasn't it?
That was the Basque ring, the working dog ring, yeah. So he's a little poppet, and I do love Crofts. These days I only show at Crofts. I only go to Crofts once a year. And I prepare pretty hard for it, and you know, we school them quite a lot on their standing and their wagging and their cheese, and you know, and they love it. They think it's brilliant. Get some time off running around picking things up and delivering them properly, and stand there, wag, and get a big pile of cheese. You know, couldn't be better.
Do you get them to wag that? Do you teach them to wag their tail when they're standing?
Yeah. So you start by teaching them to catch. So you stand in front of them, because working dogs always want to sit. So if you stare into their eyes, they want to sit because you're a little bit dominating. And but some of them don't. Some of them are natural standers, but most working dogs will sit. So first what you do is you teach them to catch quite a big bit of sausage or a big star-shaped biscuit or something, so it doesn't bounce off their head and then run around trying to find it. And you teach them to catch. Then you put a primer word with it. You ready? and something like that. So they stand looking really alert, ears forward, but usually at that point they can't wag because they can't think of both things, front end and back at the same time. And then you teach them catching's easy, and then you'll find that their tail, like any dog with anything that starts to become easy, its tail will start to wag because it can now multitask. It doesn't have to think. It's got the muscle memory. And and that's how you teach it. So then I start to sing to them. So they put their fingers in their ears, but I will just sing a little song. And then when I pause the song, I'll flick them a piece of food. So they listen to the song going, go on, go on, go on, stop singing, stop singing, flick them a bit of food. So there you go.
Lovely.
Do you phase out the singing before you get in the ring at crafts?
Well, sometimes it really depends which dog it is. And when they start to go flat, when they've been like peaked too soon or something on something, and you see the judge suddenly turn around to look at you, you can bring that tool back in and sing to them, and they go, "She's singing, yeah!" You know,
karaoke. Fab.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a bit of Bonnie Tyler, you know, that sort of thing.
No wonder you keep getting placed. Amazing.
No, it's not for my singing. Trust me. You ask any of my friends that have been.
Sorry for you.
Yeah, exactly. This mad lunatic woman standing in the ring singing randomly to her dog.
Yeah, poor girl. Give her a rosette.
Love it. Love it.
Cool. And finally, where can people go to like find out more about you and your training and whatever else?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, so my main website is willandbriar.com, WYLAN for November, BRIAR, willandbriar.com. Everything is on there, but we have a very, very heavy presence on Facebook and only Facebook. We don't do the other social medias, so don't look for us there. So there's Will and Briar Gundog Training Group on Facebook, and there's Will and Briar Labradors group on Facebook, and you are perfectly entitled to try and rock up to both of them and get all the information you need on there.
Cool. Well,
thank you for joining us, Di.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. It's not just gun dogs and not just guard dogs, but all things canine, as we hope you have discovered. Please like, share and subscribe and help us spread a bit of common sense back into dog ownership. And a review wouldn't go amiss either. Catch up with Les and Ross again in about 14 days for more canine conversations. Until next time, stay well and enjoy your dogs. Any dog-related questions or topics, just drop an email to talk@cfba.uk or message us via facebook.com/Gundogs and Guard Dogs podcast.